the verbal assaults of the unbelievers, methods such as mockery and slander, and even physical attacks. When we examine the lives of the prophets and of the devout Muslims around them, we see that the lives of these blessed individuals were spent in struggle against unbelievers. It is at this point that we encounter one of the most striking characteristics of the prophets and the believers who followed them: their mature behavior in the peace and submission of knowing that all the events they encountered, no matter how difficult the circumstances, actually came from God. These superior attributes, which stem from their profound belief in God, represent an excellent role model for all Muslims. Unbelievers have at all times employed tactics designed to trouble the prophets and devout believers, wear them down, and turn them back to false religions. Yet believers always acted in the certain knowledge that these ugly attacks would always be resolved in an auspicious way, and that their honesty would eventually be revealed. It is emphasized in the Quran that lies and slanders that might appear to work against believers are in fact auspicious and not bad at all. This is described in the following terms in one verse by citing an incident from the time of our Prophet. May God bless him and grant him peace. There is a group of you who propagated the lie. Do not suppose it to be bad for you. Rather, it is good for you. Every one of them will incur the evil he has earned, and the one who took it on himself to amplify it will receive a terrible punishment. Societies made up of unbelievers have at all times regarded the way that the faithful follow the path of God, live by his religion, and communicate his message as a threat to their own religions. For that reason, they generally resorted to such methods as mockery and slander, as we have just seen, in order to wear believers down. When they saw that this was inadequate, they tried various other methods, such as issuing threats, imprisonment, torture, and banishment. The mistreatment to which believers were sometimes subjected during their struggle with the unbelievers is an indication of the excesses of the society of the unbelievers. Yet in return, believers always looked on the reactions and treatments they were subjected to with an auspicious eye. We can derive great wisdom from an account of an incident which took place during the time of our Prophet. It is reported that in the incident in question, the believers assaulted by unbelievers from all sides were tested and subjected to a violent tremor. At such a troubled time, the hypocrites made up various excuses and fled, thus giving themselves away. Thanks to such a moment of difficulty, the hypocrites who had long lived concealed among the community of the believers and who had sickness in their hearts were brought out into the open. In this incident, the believers saw the auspicious nature of the difficulties they faced, and since they lived in accordance with God's verses, their faith was strengthened and their devotion to him increased still further. When the believers saw the Confederates, they said, "This is what God and his messenger promised us. God and his messenger told us the truth." It only increased them in faith and in submission. Like all the other prophets, our Prophet Muhammad, may God bless him and grant him peace, sent as a blessing to all the worlds, encountered a great many difficulties during the course of his life. With the patience and submission he displayed at such times, he represents a fine role model for all Muslims. When our Prophet left Makkah, the pagans followed with the aim of killing him. Our Prophet sought shelter in a cave to hide from them. But the pagans came up to the mouth of the cave in which the Prophet was hiding. At such a troubled time, our Prophet told the believer alongside him not to be despondent, and reminded him to submit to God. If you do not help him, God did not help him when those who did not believe drove him out, and there were 2 of them in the cave. He said to his companion, "Do not be despondent. God is with us." There can be no doubt that the only reason why our Prophet was not afraid and despondent and felt no doubts when his life was endangered was his trust in God and the knowledge that every event created by him is auspicious and full of good. Prophet Moses' struggle with Pharaoh clearly shows how a situation that appears to be in believers' disfavor can, by the will of God, suddenly be turned around. Pharaoh and his army set out to catch Moses and the believers who had fled with him from Egypt. The believers found themselves in front of the sea when they were spotted by Pharaoh. The words of Moses at this point are most striking. Although the sea was in front of Moses and the army of the Pharaoh behind him, he acted in the trust that help would be forthcoming from God, and thus revealed his superior moral values. So they pursued them towards the east, and when the 2 hosts came into sight of one another, Moses' companion said, "We will surely be overtaken." He said, "Never. My Lord is with me, and he will guide me." One of the finest examples of events that appear to be bad for believers eventually turning out for the best is the life of Prophet Joseph, as described in the Quran. Joseph was tested by a great many difficulties, such as his brothers throwing him down a well and abandoning him there at a young age, being slandered by the wife of the governor in whose house he lived, and thus spending a long time in a dungeon. The way that Joseph interpreted everything auspiciously and his submission to God are revealed in the Quran. Joseph said, "My Lord, you have granted power to me on earth and taught me the true meaning of events. Originator of the heavens and earth, you are my friend in this world and the next. So take me as a Muslim at my death and join me to the people who are righteous." With his skill, courage, and submission in the face of the traps set for him by the unbelievers, Prophet Abraham is also a role model for believers. The unbelievers decided to respond to Abraham with violence and oppression, and resorted to the terrible cruelty of throwing him into the fire. At first sight, it might seem that Abraham would be burnt and killed by the multitude of unbelievers. But in the same way that death only happens if God so wills it, so fire only has the power to burn if God so wills. God, the creator of all things, commanded the fire to be cool and peaceful for Abraham, and turned the snares of the unbelievers back on their own heads. We said, "Fire, be coolness and peace for Abraham." They desired to trap him, but we made them the losers. Believers must always exhibit a powerful submission to God in the face of troubles by taking the prophets, praised for their moral values and verses, as role models. In fact, all events that one at first imagines to be harmful are in fact tests and work to the benefit of believers.